C1. You are listening at FameTV.info. For money, she married a man she had never met. The man had only one request for her: to have children as soon as possible. Xing Beihan was 29 years old, and his emotional state had always been a mystery. His mother had always begged him to marry her. Meanwhile, Su Liok met all the requirements and was selected as the object of marriage, won a large number of colorful gifts, and solved the urgent need of burning eyebrows at home. What awaited her was the unfamiliar life of a rich family, as well as a husband who did not know what he looked like at all. The Su Liok tree was told repeatedly before she came in that her first duty was to bear children, and that everything she did had to be done for a living. Although she felt wronged and felt that her body had been used as a tool by others, she had chosen to do all this herself. She could only endure it. Su Liok, this year 21 years old. The family is very poor, both parents are seriously ill. In order to cure the parents, she opted to drop out of school to marry. The sun had set long ago, and the sky was dyed red. She wore a red dress and waited in the new room. After a long wait, a servant came in and turned out the light. In the darkness, the servant lowered his voice and said, "Young master is about to arrive." Upon hearing this, Quercus Suli instinctively sat up straight and placed his hands on his lap like a schoolboy. Not long after, he heard the door open. In the darkness, the sound of his footsteps could be heard clearly as his expensive shoes landed on the wool carpet. That Su Li's body subconsciously tightened as she listened to the footsteps getting closer to her. She was getting more and more nervous. Xing Beihan walked to the window and opened it, allowing the moonlight to enter the bedroom. There was some light in the previously dark room, so Su Li could clearly make out Xing Beihan's silhouette. He stood in front of the French window, his back to the Su Liok. He was very tall, at least 1.8 meters. From the outline, it could be seen that he had a beautiful figure and smooth muscles. He should have been exercising a lot, but I don't know what his face looks like. Xing Beihan turned around and walked back to Su Liok with an intimidating aura. The Su Liok tree immediately turned its head away, afraid that the man would notice that she was secretly watching her. He sat down beside the Su Liok and began to move his hands over her. Su Li had never experienced such an awkward scene. His entire body was as stiff as a piece of wood. His figure wasn't bad, so Xing Beihan pursed his lips in satisfaction. Throughout this entire process, the two of them did not speak a single word. Suryawang couldn't see his face clearly either, he could only see it through the moonlight. He didn't look very ugly. Then why did he turn off the light? What a strange man. However, she couldn't care so much. Marrying a chicken would be like following a chicken, marrying a dog would be the same for a dog. Since she had chosen to marry him, regardless of whether he was a fatty, a cripple, a deaf person or an incomparably ugly appearance, she had to be his wife. A moment later, Xing Beihan closed in on Su Li. His actions were so crazy that Su Liok couldn't help but say, "Well, can you not be so hasty? I'm not ready yet. Cut the crap." Xing Bei's voice was icy cold. His voice was very low and very magnetic, but his tone was very cold. It carried a sense of majesty and blame, as if he had come out of an icy pond that had been sealed for 1,000 years. How could this man have such a temper? This was their wedding night, otherwise, they wouldn't have spoken. They would be so rude whenever they spoke. But then again, the first time I heard my husband's voice, the Su Liok felt wonderful. His voice was very pleasant to hear. Someone with such a voice shouldn't be too ugly, right? Suryawang wanted to curse back, but she held herself back. Before she came, her mother had repeatedly told her to control her temper. In the wealthy class, compared to her own family, she had to endure all the humiliation and bear all the hardships. She had to be a good wife. Even if she didn't have any feelings for her husband, she could still use her gentleness and kindness to slowly move him. This was all for her future happiness. The Su Liok had taken her mother's words in, so she held back. There was still a long way to go. Xing Beihan's voice rang out again, "Women, remember this. You are only my wife in name. Apart from having children for me, you have no value whatsoever. You don't have any leeway to bargain with me, so be obedient, understand. What he needed was a wife who would not stir up trouble, a wife who would not interfere in his private life. A sensible woman who knew when to advance and when to retreat. Therefore, before he chose his marriage partner, he had specifically instructed his secretary to choose someone with an honest and foolish personality. He didn't know if this woman had this kind of personality that he looked down at her condescendingly as he said this, not treating her as an equal wife at all. It was as if he were the heavens, controlling everything in her world. She could only waggle her tail and beg in his shadow, relying on his charity. For some reason, Quercus Suli's heart ached. She gritted her teeth and nodded with great difficulty. Then, without any preparation, Yingbinfen seized her. There were tears of grievance in the corners of her eyes. She wanted to cry, but she couldn't. It was her wedding night, and she should have been happy, but she had nothing. No wedding, no wedding dress, just a car that took her from home to here. Everyone's face was cold, and they didn't greet her. She was kept in this room and waited until the evening when her husband arrived, his face hidden. Being attacked by a man who didn't know what he looked like already made her feel uncomfortable. Once again, he had completely disregarded her being his first time and had taken over her without any preparation, treating her body like a toy he was playing with. Do you feel aggrieved, Quercus Shuriensis? Do you have the right to talk about your grievances? If his parents took the 2 million yuan gift, wouldn't it be equivalent to selling his daughter? Everyone knew that this was just a business deal. She was merely bought for 2 million by her family. What right did she have to lose her temper? What right did she have to talk about being wronged? He could only quietly endure it, and fulfill his obligations. Yingbinfen's movements grew larger and larger. Suli and Oak had been gritting their teeth the entire time, enduring the pain without making a single sound. Suddenly, the man called out tenderly, "Little Yen, little Yen." Yingbinfen's voice, accompanied by rapid breathing, caused goosebumps to appear all over Suli's body. This is the first time someone has ever called her that. It was as if they had been in love for a long time. Yingbinfen was still shouting. "Little Yen, little Yen." His voice was very soft and gentle, completely different from the previous ice-cold voice. It was as if he had become a completely different person. His actions also became very gentle, taking care of her like a treasure. He couldn't help fondling her, but he was also afraid of breaking her. The man's attitude changed so quickly that it made everyone's skin crawl. Listen to the full novel at FameTV.info, direct link in the description.